Good evening to you both. And let's begin with turmoil on the trade front. U.S. President Donald Trump Thursday signing an executive order increasing tariffs to 35% on goods not covered by the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, delivered on the eve of the August 1st deadline for a trade deal.
They've been treating our farmers very badly. They've been treating our country very badly for years. And look, we like Canada. I love Canada. I have so many friends in Canada. But they've been very poorly led. They've been very, very poorly led. And all we want is fairness for our country.
Now, in response, Prime Minister Mark Carney issuing a statement expressing disappointment by the hike, but remains committed to CUSMA. And as the new tariff takes effect, it adds to pain already being felt by companies here in our province. MA Steel Foundry in Calgary down to operating 2 days a week, building parts used in the energy sector north and south of the border, and customers holding off on orders.
Price that we've been charging, when the customer gets it, it is now 50% higher in price. Those customers are hurting right now, just like we are here.
Meanwhile, Calgary-based CPKC Rail Line says it has effectively halted the shipment of steel.
Cross-border steel business is, for all practical purposes, shut down at this point at a 50% tariff level.
Since June, the Trump administration has imposed a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum, and Canada is, of course, the top supplier to the U.S. Ellen, what do you think Donald Trump accomplishes by ratcheting up not only the tariffs but the rhetoric as well?
You know, we've seen this kind of leading with fear and being forceful in his negotiations, trying to get what he wants with his trade agreements. He has come to agreement with a few different places around the world that we've seen this morning. So I think he just instills fear, and it's his tactic, as we've seen. Thank goodness for CUSMA at this point. And we just have to continue investing in our resources and investing in our businesses here in Canada. And I feel really badly for the industries that are impacted.
Tyler, is now the time to panic? How do you think Canadians should take all of this in?
I don't think it would ever be a good time to panic. I mean, I think that we've seen an intransigent president who has said, more friendly things, warmer things towards Prime Minister Mark Carney, towards Canada, towards our industry in the last couple months. And then we've got this sort of reversal about face on Thursday evening. So I don't think it's worth panicking if for no other reason than we have no idea what Trump is going to do next. We don't know really how those negotiations are going. We don't really know what progress is being made. We do know what the impacts on the economy are starting to look like, but we also know that there are long-term modifications that can be made to the economy and things like that to sort of smooth over some of these economic road bumps. So I don't think there's ever a good time to panic, and I do think that this is just part of dealing with Donald Trump when he's in the Oval Office. Is we're just not going to know what's going to happen next.
It's chaotic, Alan. So what do you expect to see coming now of the rising cross-border trade tensions, or could it actually be that maybe there's a deal imminent?
Well, a deal would be good, because then we have some idea of what he actually wants and what he's trying to do here, and we can, like Tyler said, prepare for what we need to do as a country to ensure some stability and to help protect our citizens here. I don't know how imminent it is. Like we talked about, he's very unpredictable. So it's just about focusing on doing great work here and trying to just be mindful of what we can do as things come to fruition.
All right. While the trade tiff with the Trump administration continues to play out, trade tensions flaring up across the Alberta-BC border. Neighboring wine producers are accusing the Alberta government of not playing fair by double-dipping on taxes.
Our sales have dropped of people who want wine shipped to them in Alberta, because when we explain the new tax, they're all really upset at their government. Daniel Smith thinks it's important to gouge us and gouge the Alberta consumer versus helping to support Canada.
A $4.11 flat tax is added to every liter of wine sold in Alberta. For any bottle of wine that costs between $15 and $20, a 5% rate is applied, 10% on bottles between $20 and $25, and 15% on anything above that.
So that's really impactful on folks who maybe come visit BC's wineries and want to ship a case back. You suddenly find the Alberta government expects you to pay an extra $50, $60 for something that did not go through the Alberta system.
While BC producers say they've had plenty of conversations, Alberta just isn't listening. Our province, however, says the tax is meant to support the long-term viability of Alberta's liquor industry.
When it comes to the markup, I know Minister Nally's been working hard to make sure that we can find the right balance. Obviously, we want to be able to promote Alberta producers here in Alberta.
The government also says the new levy applies to all wine sold in Alberta, not just BC wine. Tyler, how do you weigh what's happening here? Would this be the same as BC taxing Alberta beef when it comes across the border? Because they have a beef industry as well.
Yeah, I mean, it would be. This is certainly a sign of an interprovincial trade barrier that's going up, a sign that we don't still, even though everyone's been talking about it for the past several months, have free trade within Canadian borders. So you know, on one hand, you have this government talking a lot about dropping interprovincial trade barriers, but on the other hand, you have them maintaining this particular interprovincial trade barrier in an effort to protect domestic producers, which is, in essence, how tariffs are supposed to work. So it's a bit of a, and wine is also always the thing that ends up being the product up for dispute between BC and Alberta. If you remember during the Trans Mountain debate, there was talk of suspending imports of BC wine and things like that. So you know, it's unfortunate, but you can see where the government is coming from in terms of trying to protect its domestic industry.
Ellen, how do you see this playing at a time when provinces, to Tyler's point, are working together to remove trade barriers across the country, not to mention Alberta pushing for new pipelines to the West Coast, which would have to go through BC?
Yeah, I think it's definitely contradictory to where we kind of need to be going and what the mindset that we're promoting every business and every individual have across the country, this sort of stronger together mentality. It's unfortunate. I know even many people at boutique wine stores are struggling daily with various different things and taxes, and this is just another example of that. Event companies as well. So yeah, it's a bit contradictory, and I guess we'll see what makes of it here.
We heard from former Deputy Premier Thomas Lukaszuk off the top on his citizen-led Forever Canadian campaign being cleared to begin collecting petition signatures. They launched this weekend. They have until October 28th to collect nearly 300,000 names. Tyler, you've been busy this week writing about dueling referendum questions on the issue of separation, including the one referred to the courts by Elections Alberta. How do you make sense of the complexities of all that's playing out here and how politically fraught this is?
It's a hard question to answer because it is so complicated. It does seem very strange that we have these two different referendum questions, one of which is a constitutional referendum question, the other which is a policy or legislative issue, and they're sort of operating in slightly different worlds, which explains why one ended up before the courts and the other one has not. You also have rules from Elections Alberta that says you cannot have two referendum questions at the same time on the same subject, which it certainly appears that we have here, although that's been disputed by the Alberta Prosperity Project. So I don't know what's going on. To some extent, it feels like it's a race to see whoever gets there first, and whoever gets there first is going to get their question on the ballot. The one thing that does seem pretty likely at this point, though, is that this won't be on the municipal election ballot in October. It would be a very, very tight timeline to make that happen, which then raises the question of when do we actually have this? Does it end up being in the provincial election in 2027? Is there going to be some sort of special referendum election called next year at some point? Is the government going to just sort of push this down the road until after the next election, perhaps for the next municipal election? We just really don't know what's going on. And it's a very complicated process, and the provincial government has not, I think, done a very good job of explaining what its role is in all of this compared to Elections Alberta.
Ellen, this whole complex dialogue around one petition being cleared to move forward and political debate over a different question being referred to the courts, where do you think that leaves the average Albertan in weighing this whole issue of separation?
Yeah, excellent question. And to Tyler's point, I think it's just been so poorly communicated. I spoke with my team here. I've spoken with many people about this. Some people think that a referendum is happening. Some people think that more people want to separate. Some people like myself, don't believe that we will separate. And is it necessary to be doing this? I feel like it's quite confusing. From a PR perspective, it would be great if the government and even various news folks could put complex information like this out in kind of a chronological point form manner, so we could understand. As Tyler mentioned, there's policy changes that have happened that change the timeline for each of these potential petitions going out, trying to get the question that they hope to see. So there's all sorts of different things at play, and it is very complicated. If that answers your question, people are confused.
Well, and I just want to point out that Tyler did an excellent job this week with the story that he wrote for the National Post. That it's kind of a tale of the tape, Tyler, and it does a very good job of explaining what's been going on. All right, so from storm clouds over referendum question contention to stormy weather soaking the Calgary region. Heavy rain at the start of the week left vehicles submerged in giant puddles, triggered traffic headaches on busy roads, even turned sand traps into water hazards on Calgary golf courses.
A lot of water going around the ball. You see lots of water coming off the spin as you're going down the fairway. Yeah, it's wet.
Yeah. How many strokes did it add to your game?
A lot.
Well, it's been tough on drivers and duffers. There has not actually been enough moisture to impact low water levels.
It will take more than just a few weeks of rain to move out of the long-term hydrological drought.
Now, to the north in Edmonton, July brought a mixed bag of conditions with occasional storms, but they didn't amount to much.
It's usually the rainiest month of the year, followed by June, and we're below seasonal rainfall numbers.
And for those hoping for a July filled with heat,
you have to do what you have to do. You live in Edmonton and you have to put up with it.
We have this funny thing here in Edmonton where we want to hit 30 degrees, and I think once we hit 30 degrees, we feel like, oh, it's summer, and that's how we calibrate where it should be, but that's really not the case.
Statistically, Edmonton's average daytime high in July is just over 23 degrees, and that was par for the course this year. Ellen, okay, you're in Calgary. How'd you make out with all the moisture falling this week, and is there some summer to salvage?
Yeah, I think Calgarians, and I think in Edmonton as well, we are so resilient. Like, for example, it was the Folk Festival, and the folks down there with these great umbrellas and raincoats, and they're listening to Cake until 1 a.m. or whatever it was in the pouring rain. It just goes to show that we are definitely like a bit warrior cowboy-ish here. We can get out there. And my husband and my son, they wanted to go camping, but they couldn't because of the rain. So they had to backcountry 4 hours up to Lillian Lake to do the fishing that they wanted to do. So we just have to work a little harder for it this year.
All right. So Tyler, as an Edmontonian, what's your assessment of the summer so far? Is it meeting your expectations? Is it drawing you into the great outdoors?
I think we've been deceived a little bit by the last few years because we've had such hot summers the last couple of years, and this actually feels like a little bit more of a return to normal in some ways. I was certainly lamenting the lack of warm weather, but it's rather hot here right now, and I'm absolutely stewing in my upstairs office. So it's a little bit, you're going to be unhappy no matter what, I think, at least for me.
All right. We have maybe 30 seconds. How about 15 each for a winner this week or a loser? Your choice. Ellen?
I would say the losers are the folks that wanted to go camping because that was very muddy.
All right, Tyler?
There's my loser. Over to you for the winner.
Yeah, winner's got to be Thomas Lukazik getting his petition for his referendum question off the ground ahead of the competition.
Yeah, officially launching on Saturday. Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Great to see you both. Hope you have an awesome long weekend.
You too, Michael.
Thank you.